All right, so we're going to learn how to clean a kitchen. I'm just going to kind of break it down section by section. Um, I tied in time estimates from ChatGPT. So when you're out there working in the field, if any of these time estimates seem incorrect or it's taking you longer than what it says here, please let us know because that's what Genie uses to make sure and book enough time for each task you're assigned to. Okay. Cleaning countertops, right? ChatGPT says the time estimate is 5 to 7 minutes. I guess it seems about right. So here's what you do. You want to clear all the items off the countertop, right? If you need to scooch them to one side or the other, that's totally cool. And then spray your cleaning solution. If it's in a kitchen, it's probably going to be something like this or 409. Anyways, so when you're going to let the cleaning agent sit for at least 15 seconds, right? Something to keep in mind: natural stone. You're going to have to be able to identify marble, granite, things like that, right? We have special cleaning agents for those. So if you run into a situation where you run into that and they say, oh, just go ahead and use the 409, I'd say no, this actually really should use the right cleaning agent. So when you are wiping down countertops, you want to make sure and wipe in an S pattern, right? Let me grab a towel, right? So you're going to make an S as you go, all right? And and that'll really help because you're technically cleaning over each section twice and you're not missing any spots, okay? And then dry it, okay? And then put the counter items back, right? If you need to scooch them back to the other side, that's great. Don't miss under the appliances. That's one of the first things that they look at, okay? All right, so wiping cabinets. That's another one of the steps. It says the time estimate for that in a whole kitchen is 8 to 12 minutes. It depends on how many cabinets there are, right? So we're just gonna have to try and take a baseline. So again, try and keep Genie updated. Anyways, wiping cabinets are really easy. You start at the top and you work your way down using a damp microfiber cloth and some cleaner. It just really depends on what it's made out of. In a lot of cases, you're probably going to want to use the Murphy's oil soap that I don't have really handy right at the moment. Anyway, so Murphy's oil soap most likely. Depending on if it's a painted surface, just use damp water, on the rag and see if everything will come off. Make sure, follow it and dry it with the microfiber, okay? Not drying it leaves streaks. So let's see. So make sure and wipe the handles and the edges of the doors, right? Get the whole thing really good. Use a toothbrush for detail work, right? So if you need to get in between those little sections there. Keep in mind, dish soap cuts through grease, right? It does a great job. I mean, they use it to save wildlife. And then open the doors a little bit while you're doing the cabinets so that you can get inside the edges of that section there, okay? You only need to do the front side of the cabinets. All right, sinks and faucets, right? So it's time to clean the sink. So what you want to do is rinse the sink out. So you want to get all that gunk that's like left on there already, just kind of wash down the drain. And then you're going to want to use a cleaning agent, probably the Clorox, because that's going to disinfect, right? And it's got some bleach in there. So be careful when you're spraying it, not to get on your shirt. Anyway, so once you apply that, give it some dwell time, maybe 30 seconds or so, which is actually longer than it seems. All right. And then once you're done, scrub the sink and the fixtures. You want to get any like little, crusty stuff off there may be. And the detail brush around the edges of the water faucet handle. Okay. We want to do what they're not able to do, right? They can just wipe really quick themselves. Let's see. Again, let those dry thoroughly to prevent spots. So you want to make sure and use your microfiber cloth to do that, okay? So loading the dishwasher, not everybody's going to ask you to do that. The time estimate on that says 3 to 5 minutes. This is a pretty important one, but often you won't have to do it. So anyways, so the idea is you don't want to throw a bunch of dishes into the dishwasher that are going to be, yucky, because our last step, we never want to run the dishwasher unless the customer wants us to, because sometimes they want to look and see how you did the dishes before they press it closed, right? And so, you don't have to make the dishes clean, really, or sanitary, but you do want to get all the stuff off there and effectively, look cleanish. So, anyway, so load the food methodically, right? Put plates next to each other, lined up, put bowls, near each other, so that when they go to unload it, it looks like it was put in there with some thought, okay? So anyways, and then, so don't overcrowd, right? So make sure you don't overfill it, because people will complain about that. Wipe down the door, right? And the controls for the dishwasher, right? You want to make that look clean too. Use your toothbrush, get around the edges of everything there. That's a very commonly handled things when people are doing their dishes. So that handle on the dishwasher is often pretty full of germs. So make sure and get that one. I wouldn't necessarily use the Clorox on that. Yeah, I would use probably the 409. That would be a good one. Okay. So anyways, make sure and kind of, and you're going to want to use Tact on this one. Let them soak in the in the sink, hot water with some, some Dawn for a little bit, scrape off any stuff, right? Rinse it really quick, toss it in the dishwasher. All right. And so you'll do that for everything and put them in methodically. All right. So wipe the rubber seals around the edges. Don't forget. That's a really important small detail. All right, so the exterior of appliances, right? We don't need to take a ton of time on each appliance. This should take 6 to 8 minutes for a whole kitchen, right? So what you want to do is use an appliance safe cleaner. Again, you're using the 409, okay? And you want to, wipe in the same direction of the grain, right? So if it's usually a lot of the time they're going to be the brushed, steel, okay? And so you'll want to, when you're wiping it, wipe with the grain. And that way, if you do leave any smudges, right, or, residue that's on there, it's going to go with the grain. It's going to look like, you won't even be able to see it, okay? And then, this is the most important part on this, right? Polish it dry. So you're going to take a dry microfiber and wipe it, because you don't want to leave those smudges. The customer's going to walk in, they're going to see it, they don't want to pay, okay? And then, make sure and detail those handles for the, for the exterior, appliances, get all those little places in between, right? Include toasters, microwaves, right, if they're easily accessible. Cleaning a microwave is pretty simple. You just get the outside, you get the inside. A lot of the time they have a little plastic tray that goes inside. It's worth washing that off and putting it back in. Okay. So, again, they said that should take about 6 to 8 minutes for the whole entire kitchen. So that one, I wouldn't be surprised if you get back to me and say it's going to take longer. Cleaning the floors. Okay. So, this is kind of one of those things, because we have a carpet cleaning business too. So at a certain point when they say cleaning the tile, it's different than what we might be thinking. So when it comes to cleaning floors with the cleaning crew, all right, it says 10 to 12 minutes to do that. And so the instructions will be to vacuum or sweep. Typically, I like to vacuum, right? Whether it's carpet or tile, because you want to really get that stuff up. When you're sweeping, you're just kicking it all around the dust, and now you have to dust again, right? So vacuum tile, vacuum carpet, all that stuff. So if they want you to mop, usually that's going to be the case. Mop carefully, don't bump into things, don't get too much water on the baseboards, but there's a reason right there where you would want to mop the floor before you wipe the baseboards, okay? You don't want to make 2 passes. So, anyways, make a dry pass if needed afterwards, but quite often the floors dry pretty quick. If you're going to be doing floors and you're concerned, then you can grab a wet floor sign tape with you, okay? So, some tips would be to work from the, farthest place inwards. That's a really important thing to do with any cleaning. Just work from the farthest part back. That way, you're making progress and all the stuff back there is already done. So when you're walking forward, you end up at the front door and you're just wrapped up right then. Taking out the trash, obviously, it's a pretty easy task. It should only take 2 to 3 minutes. So basically you want to do is you want to pull the liner out with all the garbage inside of it, okay? Tie it up at the top, bring it out to the trash can, come back in, and reline the bag, right? So some pro tips on this one would be to keep a couple of spare, liners at the bottom of the can so that if they clean it beforehand, they're going to see some bags down there and they're going to be like, wow, that's really mindful of them. You want to disinfect the interior and exterior of the can, right? So use some Lysol on the inside, okay? And then wipe it down with, again, probably the 409 on the outside of the can. If it's made out of brushed steel or something like that, you'll need to dry it off again, just like the other appliances, okay? If it's a really heavy load that you're pulling out of there, double bag it so you don't end up, bursting it on the way out to the garbage can. All right. And, this is going to kind of be one of those things that's going to be up to the customer, but usually a couple sprays of, I don't have it right here handy, some sort of freshener, if the customer wants to, odor neutralizer, but most of the time they don't, so we don't even put them in the bag. But once you talk to a customer, you go to their house and you find out, whoa, theirs is different, then the next time you go, you can go ahead and bring some odor neutralizer and keep it in there, okay? So dusting the baseboards, right? And this is just for the kitchen. A time estimate is 5 to 7 minutes. To me, that sounds a little fast, but I guess if you get, pretty efficient at it, it might be about right. So 5 to 7 minutes. The instructions would be to start off with a microfiber duster. We have those ones that we use to do the top of fan blades. Get all the dry stuff off of there first, right? You don't want to just smear that stuff when you go back through. And then, and with a damp cloth, okay? So if it's really grimy, you're going to want to put some of the, probably, again, 409. You're going to use a lot of 409. It's great stuff. You can put some of that on the rag if you want to, just to help kind of get stuff out. And so you want to make sure and get, the tops and the fronts of the baseboards, right? So, I'm just looking around at baseboards right now thinking, there's sometimes what you'll see is, some gunk there, some damage, right? And so, if when you're doing your initial walkthrough, you see near the baseboards that there's, like it's puffing out or there's missing paint or something like that, bring it to the customer's attention, okay? For really tough things like, scuffs and whatnot, use magic eraser. That's really going to help get that stuff out. And you don't want to go so hard you're peeling off paint, okay? Focus on the corners and under cabinets, all right? Those are some areas that, people will look specifically where they get the places in between, right? So we need to get the places in between. Then to spot wipe walls, right? What you're going to want to do is you're really going to focus on the highly touched areas. Usually those are around the edges of walkways, so if you've got like a wall, that goes around a corner, from the bathroom to the front room, for example, you're going to want to look where the hands are going to want to try and touch those edges, because just without thinking, people do that, right? And you'll start to notice where things are usually going to be dirty, but it's really important to get on that edge of that wall, okay? Get any areas that that you see on the walls, have that, right? So again, wipe very gently. We don't want to pull off paint, okay? And if it's flat paint, you might know what that looks like. I'll give you an example of that in person. Okay, so if it's flat paint, then putting water on it can actually change the color. So we don't want to do that. You'll need to be able to identify the difference. Basically, the flat paint looks like there's no glossiness to it at all, right? So There's, the next one up is the one that usually people are using these days, and that's going to be semi-gloss paint, and it looks a little bit glossy. It's not like glossy like gloss paint is, but it's somewhere in between. So you can usually tell when you're looking at it once you see the difference. So anyways, especially on walls and paint and stuff like that, don't oversaturate it. That's going to start, working into the paint and making, significant discoloration. Okay. So, wipe gently with the cleaner on the cloth. Okay. So, in those areas, test with the magic eraser in a small spot where you won't really see it before you start going gangbusters on the rest of it. Okay. And then dry after wiping. Okay. So, you'll find efficient ways to do this to where you're not like going all the way back, doing the process, going all the way back. You kind of want to do it in, 5 or 6, foot sections, whatever you can reach without having to move. Okay. And then move to the next, move to the next, move to the next. And that's going to be pretty, pretty efficient ways to do it. Okay. Anyway, so dry after wiping it. We don't want to leave a bunch of like water residue on there or, cleaning agent, so make sure and just do a dry wipe. That's for most things. If you're getting it wet, dry it back off again. Cobweb removal, it's really easy. There's a cobweb removal tool. It's on a telescoping pole, and at the top it's got this big pom-pom looking thing, right? Basically what you do is you put that pole up there with the pom-pom thing, you wipe around the corners, you get the cobwebs down. It takes 2 seconds, right? So you'll want to go around that. You have 3 to 4 minutes budgeted to do that. So I think even the Adams house wouldn't take that long. So anyways, be sure to kind of like hit that on the tops of cabinets and fixtures, right? So that, while you're at it with the tool, you might as well hit that dust off of there, okay? So you're going to want to do this before the surfaces, right? This is really important because all the dust that's, coming down from the cobweb areas are going to fall down onto whatever's below it, right? So you want to do that as one of the first things that you do. So whatever you're cleaning up afterwards, you don't have to do it again, right? So anyways, sweep the top of the corners with that and the top of cabinets, fixtures. Make sure you look behind curtains, over doors, like I said, all the corner edges of the top of the walls. In fact, so, all cleaning, when you go from, one situation to the next, you want to start all the way in the back and work your way forward. So this is the same thing in the kitchen. If it's got a breakfast nook attached, start in the breakfast nook, work your way forward. Don't start somewhere in the middle and then jump back and forth. It's too chaotic, right? So anyway, so this ChatGPT says all those tasks combined take 50 to 70 minutes for a standard kitchen, okay? Done with one crew member. Now, with 2 people, that's about 30 to 40 minutes if the tasks are split and the flow is efficient, right? The idea of having 2 people out there is not just to split up and you go do your own thing. A big part of it is to actually work in tandem. So when we're in the van and I have, Mason with me, he's doing the vacuuming in front of me and I'm following behind him with the final steps, right? So we're working together on the same things with each other, right? And that seems to help keep everything moving faster and motivated. And you guys might see some things that, the others don't, right? And so staying in the kitchen together, very important. You just work your way out, right? So anyways, that's our training on how to clean a kitchen. Thank you.